Welcome to Engaging with Monique, a podcast where you can find inspiration and hear from people who are engaging with the world in exciting and inspiring ways. Let's jump right in with Monique.
Hi, I'm Dr. Monique Henderson, and this is the first episode of Engaging with Monique, a program designed to inspire and challenge you and your friends to make this world a bit better and to find your meaning in your daily life. Today, for the first episode, it's just going to be me. Now, this will not be the case as we continue on. We will have different guests, but in my leadership, I never want to ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do. So today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I would personally answer some of the questions that my guests will be asked in the weeks to come. We have a really exciting season lined up for you. We have in our first season, we have an individual who is known as the pickleball evangelist because he is a lawyer by day, but also spends his evenings telling people about the magic and joy of pickleball. It's a sport that has come to mean a little something to me too. So we'll talk about that. You'll also hear from one of my English Learners Engage coaches. I'll tell you a little bit about English Learners Engage in a minute. She will be talking about her role and why she chooses to be a foster parent to migrant children, migrant teenagers, actually. You'll also hear from a Mississippi school superintendent about how she keeps a work-life balance and makes sure that she is fully living to the most every day. You will hear from a pastor friend of mine who chose to shift from a larger church to a smaller one so that he could be more connected to people and to his community. So lots of neat things coming up this season. But to start today, I do want to just tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm doing this. What is the purpose of it? I know that your time is valuable. And so you want to spend that time in a purposeful way, in a way that adds value to your life, adds joy to your life. So who am I? And why in the world do I think that I needed to do a podcast? Besides the fact that people joke that everyone's doing a podcast now, you might have already picked up on the fact that one of my roles is educator. I am the owner and director of an educational consulting business called English Learners Engage. And we support students who are multilingual learners learning English. And we also support their teachers, their administrators, their families. We do student tutorials, professional development, in-classroom teacher coaching and modeling, and also have some other supports. I've also written a book called 31 Things Your English Learners Want You to Know, Lessons from the Classroom. It has surprised me by being so popular. And in the next few weeks, I'm going to start work. I've kind of started a little bit on a book, probably maybe going to be called Valley Road Heiress. I'm not really sure. But it's going to tell a little bit about my life and some of my journeys. And so this is a place where I'm kind of sussing out who I am and where I want to go forth and encourage you to do the same. I mentioned I'm an educator and a business owner, some other roles that are even more important to me. I'm a wife. I'll be celebrating my 28th anniversary soon. It's kind of wild. I'm also a mom to 2 young adults, and I try to be a good friend. I feel like sometimes my work keeps me on the road and I'm not quite the friend I want to be, but I'm really working on that in this season. I'm also, as I already alluded, a really bad pickleball player, and I am a super flawed child of God. Now, this podcast will not be a quote Christian podcast, but you will at times, possibly. I know some of our guests for this season do talk about a sense that their purpose comes from God and that God is who calls them to do the work that they do. And that is a belief that I share. So that's important to me. Super flawed, though. I always joke I am a terrible Christian, but I'm trying to be better every day, as probably are many of you. So why do a podcast, right? There are lots of different influences out in the world. There are lots of different entertainment and educational choices that you could choose. But as I reflected in the spring, I was just thinking about, to be perfectly honest, how hard my life has been over the last probably 5 years, really since the pandemic. I lost both of my parents in about a 15-month period. I'm an only, and I helped them with their caregiving in their final days. I am an only child, so I also said goodbye to my childhood home, the home that I moved into when I was not quite 9. That home has been kind of this idea of home for me for many decades. And so grieving the loss of that place, as silly as that might sound, is also part of my journey. There are so many joys in parenting and in having young adult children, but it's also a huge time of adjustment. And most people find that while you're embracing the new, you also do kind of grieve what is past and the seasons that are past. So that I'm no stranger to that. I've lost some dear friends. I've lost even it may seem silly to some, but lost a family dog that was really important to us. And so just a season of loss. And then also, as I was reflecting though and thinking, wow, I've really been through a lot, I thought, no, all of us have been through a lot, right? We're all called in this life and we all deal with really, really big challenges. I also have some challenges that I won't share here, right? Because they involve other people and what they're going through, and it's not my story to tell. But just rest assured that, like you, I'm no stranger to hard days. No, the world experiences great joy and great loss every day, right? And every day we're called to get up and we're called to go out there and love people and try to make our little part of the world a tiny bit better just by being in it, whether that's in how we behave, the work that we do, what we choose to focus on and uplift. And so some of the challenges the world is facing right now, I don't need to tell you, but I look at my young adults my son, who is involved with the podcast a little bit, he is 20, and then my daughter is 22. She's going to come on, I think, next season for a little bit. But I look at what they've experienced, right? Because the last 5 years have been a really large percentage of their youngish lives. They probably think they're not young, but those of us in our 40s and 50s know that they have hopefully a lot of life and a lot of lessons ahead of them. But just the rapidly changing world and looking at technology, right? The changes in technology, the changes in government at the national and international level, a detachment from community. I think that many of us would agree that technology has both brought us together and pulled us apart. I've heard from a lot of people that tell me that life can be a little lonely, that they feel a little bit lonely at times. I get to meet a lot of people through my work with English Learners Engage because we influence in some way hundreds of schools and across the Deep South primarily. And I get to meet lots of different people every day. And I hear stories of loneliness and isolation, and just a sense of wanting to connect with others. And so that's the hope here. I'm a former journalist. I was a print journalist. There aren't many of us left anymore out there doing daily news journalism, but that was what I did for really from my 20s. And it was a time of great joy. And I really enjoyed telling stories. I picked it up again on a part-time basis in my 30s and 40s. And so I believe in the power of stories. I believe in the power of story and the power of people to make the world better, to create change. And so it just occurred to me that I would know some really neat people and I know how to tell a story. And so I wanted to just bring us all together. And maybe one day we'll all be able to get in a room together and talk. Maybe having some of those face-to-face opportunities is also a goal of mine. You might wonder, how are people chosen for the podcast? Some of it is they have to just be willing to come on and do it, right? I have learned that some people get a little nervous in front of a camera or the idea of being recorded, even though we've recorded them, that our sound editor, Jonathan, is very good at going back and agreeing to edit anything that maybe is a misspoken thing. But regardless, people are a little bit nervous about coming on. But the people that have chosen to come on, they're chosen to be here because of their energy, their dedication, just to getting up and showing up every day in ways that are important to them. And that in some way they're making the world better in big and small ways. It could be through how they live. It could be through their work. Usually it's a combination of both of those. Now, here's the thing. I said I would never ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do. So when we come back from this quick break, I'm going to talk you through the answer to one of my first questions, which is just, what's it like to be you and how are you spending your time right now? And how do I make the world a little bit better and why? So hold tight for this quick commercial break and we'll be back soon.
If you have enjoyed this podcast and some of the messages and ideas shared by Dr. Henderson here on Engaging with Monique, why not have her come and speak to your school, community group, conference, or nonprofit? From California to Texas to Mississippi to South Dakota, Dr. Henderson has extensive experience connecting with both large and small groups. Her energy and insights can challenge and grow your team to make a difference, even in challenging times of rapid change. As a former journalist and educational researcher, she is also skilled at facilitating panel discussions for a variety of groups. As one client said, Dr. Henderson is always the most energetic person in the room, and she can help to serve as a great reminder of why the work that we do matters, today and always. Email Monique at EnglishLearnersEngage.com or go to EngagingWithMonique.com for more information.
Okay, I'm happy to be back with you guys. Let's jump right back in. So you will notice as you listen to these different episodes that one of the first questions I ask is, what's it like to be you and how are you spending your time these days? And you'll notice I don't ask, what is your job? Because often I believe that our job is not the most important thing about us, right? That is something that's taken me a long time to learn, but it is something that I have learned. And so you will notice that my question is, what's it like to be you? And how are you spending your time right now? So I've already touched on that, but the primary ways I'm spending my time right now are partnering with schools and districts through English Learners Engage, and then just really trying to be a good friend, a good neighbor. I'm not really good at the neighboring thing because I travel a lot. Sorry, neighbors, if you're listening. But I'm trying to be a better friend, trying to be a support to my young adult children and figuring out what in the world does that mean now that they are more independent? Where's my role now, right? Is no longer the role of that day-to-day intensive helping them to make decisions and making decisions at times for them, but it is supporting them and encouraging them and trying to inspire them through who I am and through the work that I do. And so that's a big part of why I choose to show up the way I do every day, is because I want to be a model for them. We know that as our young adult children get older, the best way that we can be an influence is just through our example, right? And so that's important to me. It's really, really important. I'm going to get a little teary on that one. I also am spending my time, I'm really learning what it means to be married post children. You know, if I'm honest, and my husband were to be honest, we a lot of our time and a lot of our energy and a lot of our focus was on our young people, our children, and their different activities, making sure they had what they needed, making sure they had the opportunity they needed. And so now my sweet husband, Matt, and I are trying to figure out, how do we want to spend our evenings? How do we want to spend our weekends? And we've done that through taking up a little bit of pickleball. We've tried our hand at disc golf. I don't know about that one. It may be for me, it may not. Well, and we try to check out an art thing here or there. We eat out way too much, partly because I'm a terrible cook and Matt bears the burden of making meals for us most nights when I'm home or when our son is around to eat with us as well. So just figuring that out is a big part of our focus. And I'm trying to figure out just what it means to live with integrity and what it means to be a good example of love and joy and peace and patience. And like I said before, what is a very rapidly changing time? I'm also adjusting to, is it middle age? I'm 51 and I'm very proud of that. One of the things that's happened recently for me is that I made the decision, it was a shocking decision to me, to not color my hair this time around. So we'll see if it stays that way, but you can see I've got some grays coming in there. And for some reason, when I sat down to get them covered recently at 51, I looked in the mirror and I thought, this just isn't really how I feel spending my day. This isn't really something I feel spending my money on right now. I wanted to just kind of put it out there. Hey, look, I have gray hair. Here it is. That doesn't mean that you won't see it covered up and highlighted in a different way later. But, just figuring out what it means to live as a more experienced and mature person, right? Hopefully. While also I celebrated my daughter the other day. We celebrated her 22nd birthday. And I was driving down the road and I was like, there's no way that Hannah can be 22 because I don't think I'm much older than 22, but again, gray hair. So maybe that was also done to be a reality check for me. But I also spend a reasonable amount of time as I can in the gym, try to get a little exercise just so I'm able to continue to pour into people that matter to me. And I have learned that I do that better when I do make time to ease on over to the gym and do something strength training wise and otherwise. So that's kind of how I spend my time. How am I making the world better? Hopefully I am. Hopefully I am. I think that's something all of us struggle to say with confidence, but I am working to do that through, hopefully, on my good days, inspiring our coaches by being a good example, inspiring our schools to be more and do more than even they thought was possible. And to really reach all students. That is something that I really get a lot of joy from. I have a colleague that says I am always the most energetic person in the room. I take that as a huge compliment, while also wondering if perhaps I do consume a little bit too much caffeine. But at any rate, just trying to bring joy, trying to bring fun, trying to bring passion to other people, while also sharing knowledge that I have around how you make a better school, how you help all students to grow in a school and really add value for all kids and all families. And so those are kind of my big ones. And then I just really try to bring kindness and joy and love wherever I am. For a while, I did a daily kindness challenge that was in honor of a friend of mine, Miss Carol Ward, who passed away from breast cancer at a young age. I was lucky to teach all four of her children. And so I kept that going for a while. And then it started to feel probably about 2 years, and then it started to feel like something that the time was up, but I do try to encourage kindness in day-to-day life, so there's that, and I think that my reason for that is a little bit about my background. Some people find rather interesting, and that is that I'm adopted, and I found out I was adopted as a young teen, and I don't blame my parents for not telling me earlier. It was a different time. They received different advice than we receive now around adoption. But when I found out, I didn't know much about who my biological family was. And so there was this understanding that settled into me very quickly that anyone I meet could be family, right? Anyone I meet could be my grandmother, my mother, my brother, my cousin. And there's an openness and an availability that comes to that that really, really shapes you. I now know who is and is not my sibling or my mother or my father or my grandparent. I now have more information on that, and that happened a few years ago, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And there's a joy in that, but there's also a little bit of a sadness, right? I do miss the days where I wondered, could that person be a relative? But once you have that mindset that we are all connected, we're all interconnected, it really gives you a lens of everyone is valuable, everyone deserves access to kindness and joy and peace and learning. So that's really a big part of why I am who I am. I think also having experienced different places is a big part of who I am. I've lived in the Deep South in Mississippi. I also spent about a decade as a young adult working in Southern California as a journalist and as an educator. And then I was in Texas raising elementary age children and teaching and working as well. And then we got back to Mississippi about 10 and a half years ago. So I just have a sense of from all those different experiences kind of make me who I am. And I find that everywhere I go, people say, "You're not from here, are you?" And I guess not. I guess I'm from everywhere. So I'm also, I think, who I am because of my parents. I mentioned that I lost both of my parents. I lost my mother in 2023, my father in 2024, sold my childhood home in 2025. And it has been a journey, to say the least. And then being adopted, there's less, and also my family moved around a lot. My mother was an immigrant. My grandparents, and when I say my mother, I mean the mother who adopted and raised me. My grandparents were Bulgarian. My mother was raised in France, and then she came to the US after she married my father. So I saw the ways that she was sometimes treated as a person with an accent. She was treated as someone who maybe wasn't as intelligent as other people, even though she was a person who spoke 7 languages well and read everything and had very, very profound opinions and thoughts on a lot of different subjects. And so my mother definitely shaped who I was. And then my father he was lifetime military, Vietnam veteran, just a very steadfast person. He also worked in security for the state of Mississippi and just was a person who meticulously showed up every day. He showed up for me as his daughter. He showed up for his wife. He showed up for a very long time for his church. and for his friends and his work. And so I just, hopefully, I have those influences from both of my parents. I'm very grateful. At the same time, I'll tell you that adoption can be a little lonely. I have my biological children who I can look at and see resemblance and see similar personality, similar genetic traits. That's a lot of fun. That's very rewarding, but not having a strong connection to the past and to past generations can be a little lonely. And so I think that's another reason that I do try to treat the people that I meet in my daily life as new family and as friends. And so that's important, and that's I'm thankful for those experiences, even while at times they can be a little bit hard or a little bit maybe othering, that sense that your experience is different from that of other people. But that's true for all of us, right? All of us have some experiences that put us outside of the mainstream. So thank you for listening so far. I'm going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to just talk really quickly about what keeps me going on my hard days and a little bit more about the work that we do with English Learners Engage.
Are you an educator who gets to experience the joy and privilege of serving English learners at the classroom, school, or district level? We can help to ensure that your students are getting what they need and helping you to feel more equipped to serve them well. English Learners Engage is a Mississippi-based educational consulting company owned by Monique that provides professional development, in-classroom teacher coaching and modeling, student tutorials, and products focused on serving multilingual students. We also provide technical support. Dr. Henderson's 2 books, 31 Things Your English Learners Want You to Know, Lessons from the Classroom, along with a sequel, are quick, accessible reads, perfect for a school or district-wide book study or for individual teachers. Each chapter is concise and clear, starting with a story about a specific student or group of students and ending with a quick tip and reflection question. Whether your school has 1 English learner who needs to build English proficiency or 1,000, EL Engage and Dr. Henderson can support you. Working together, we can take your English learners to the next level. Reach out today at Monique at EnglishLearnersEngage.com to see EL Engage's results and to get Monique and her team working for you.
Okay, thanks so much for hanging in. We are back, excited to be back, and I'm going to continue answering. Again, not going to ask guests to do something that I wouldn't do. So I'm going to answer some of the other questions that you will get to hear our guests respond to. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about a particular component of my life, which is my work. And so I've already mentioned that I work with English learners, immigrant children, and children who are still working on their English proficiency, multilingual kids. And a little bit about why I do that is just as someone who was raised by an immigrant, also, I think as someone who's adopted, as an army brat who moved around a lot as a young kid, I just think it's so important that our schools be places that are welcoming and places that serve everyone. When I showed up at 8 years old or 3rd grade, when I showed up in 3rd grade in Mississippi after having moved multiple times with my father's military career, when people in the South will ask you, now, who's your daddy? Who's your mom? When I answered them, they did not know those people because we had moved around and my father had not been in Meridian in many years. And so there was a sense maybe of not belonging because people could not place my family within the community. And that is something that is common in small towns, not just in the South, but across the US. And so, how much more do our immigrant children feel that, right? When they are new to the country, new to the language, new to the cultures and customs, new to the academic content. We had a teacher once that was a little bit grumpy that some high school kids that were new from Guatemala did not know some of the basics of US history, like the First Amendment or who George Washington was. But we know if we take a step back that, of course, they didn't know those things because those things were not emphasized in the curriculum where they're from. So there are a lot of things that our kids need to navigate. And so I really enjoy doing that work. I also really enjoy speaking in front of groups of people and trying to inspire and just create a speaking experience and a listening experience for people. Later this month, I'm recording this in October. Later this month, I will get to go to South Dakota to speak at a conference of educators there, and I will be a featured presenter, and that's something that I'm really excited about. I'm looking to expand that as well. And so just reaching more audiences through featured speeches, presentations, and things like that. So it's another part of who I am. You notice I'm doing a lot of things. I'm playing pickleball. I'm traveling across the US, working in different schools. But there are also still hard days. All of us still have hard days. And so that idea that I ask all our guests of what keeps you going on your hard days, I think my idea is that a lot has been given to me. I think about my adoption story. I think about how a lot of things had to happen to put me in the family that I was in, to have the exact experiences that I had in that family. And then a lot had to happen for me to get an education. A lot had to happen for me to be able to move and experience different things, to be a journalist. So many people have helped me along the way: teachers, editors, bosses, people that just heard I was back in Mississippi and wanted to be a help after I'd been away for 16 years. So many people have come alongside me and made my life better. And so on the hard days, I think about what it would be like if those people had not shown up for me. And so I really want to return the favor and show up for other people. So on the tough days, it's that sense that someone out there needs me to show up that keeps me going. Some days, maybe it's just my dog, I don't know, or definitely my family. My family needs me to show up and be okay and put something good out into the world. I don't want to say they need me to be a good model, but I want to be a model of what it looks like to be alive and trying to make the world better at 51. And so, yeah, so that's kind of what gets me up on the tough days. All right, when we get back, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I'm learning in this season.
Hey, my name is Jonathan Tullis. I'm the guy that's been editing this podcast. And if you like what you're hearing, I'd love to talk to you about what I can do for your nonprofit or your church or parachurch organization. I'm the founder of Strangely Warmed Media, a digital media consultancy that specializes in taking organizations to where they want to be in all aspects of digital media, including websites, podcasts, live streaming, and more. If you want to learn more, I invite you to visit my website at strangelywarmed.media. That's strangelywarmed.media, and learn about how Strangely Warmed Media can partner with you.
Hi, welcome back. Thanks for being here. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and again, something I will ask our guests, is what are some things that you're learning right now in this season? And so, I want to give this some thought because I feel like on any given day, I learn probably 10 to 20 new things. And then, if you're like me, you relearn them, right? I will look back at journals or just different text messages that I've sent to friends, and I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm learning this lesson again. I learned this lesson 10 years ago. Why am I having to revisit it? But sometimes that's how things work, right? I think it's human nature. But so one of the things that I'm really learning is to have fun. And I know that sounds odd, but for a lot of my life, I was a very serious person. And there's a lot in life to be concerned about, a lot in life to be very serious about, right? I don't pretend that that's not true. But there's also a great place for whimsy and just joy, right? And so one of the things that I'm working on is learning new things and being okay with being really bad at them. You all will hear on one of the episodes from James Renfro, who gave me a really hard time, especially early on for my pickleball game, because it was pretty rough. He jokingly would look at me and say, are you having a stroke right now? And sometimes it might have seemed so. And I still feel like when I say the score, those of you that play pickleball will know this, I always feel like it sounds like I'm working a very difficult mathematical equation, which is definitely not true. But to just have fun and be bad at things. You don't have to know everything, right? Another thing that I'm really bad at and I want to be better, I really sincerely do, is Spanish. Even while I teach children English, I'm realizing that because I like to choose the best words and because I have so many thoughts in my mind at any given time, I really struggle with speaking another language. I just shut down. And so I'm learning that it's okay to sound like a 2-year-old. Sometimes I'm walking around just labeling things in Spanish. It's like ball, apple, wall, car, and that's okay because that's where I am. And if I'm not willing to make a bit of a fool of myself, how can I expect the teachers that I work with to take risks? How can I expect my coaches that are part of English Learners Engaged to take risks? And how can I expect students to take a language risk, right? And so just having fun being bad at things. Another thing that I'm really bad about, one of our episodes, you guys will get to meet an awesome, awesome lady that everyone calls Miss B on the keys, Miss B's on the keys. And she was a music teacher and she shifted. She's still a music teacher, but she was a public school music teacher and she shifted to having her own music studio. And it's just such an inspiration. And she was my piano teacher for a while and it was brutal. It's brutal around rhythm. And I just don't have a lot of rhythm. And so I had to learn to be bad at it, but I can feel when I do take the time to play the piano, which is not what it needs to be. Sorry, Miss B's on the keys, if you're listening. I started working on piano again because I mentioned that my parents passed away. I inherited my childhood piano. I learned from a neighbor in my neighborhood growing up that it was important to my mom for the piano to stay with us in the family. And so that piano represents my mom's love of music, her love of culture, her love of learning. And so I'm glad it's in our home. And I'm working on maybe being a teeny bit better, sort of, but I also just sit down and play it really badly and with very little rhythm. Sorry, Miss B. But yeah, it's okay to be bad at things, right? Another thing that I'm really learning is I mentioned how so many people have added so much value to my life, right? But one of the things that strikes me is that so many of these people, until I've taken the time to try to tell them, which I don't always do, I should, they really a lot of times have no idea the impact that they've had on my life. Just little things that someone says. I think about even just as I was dealing with the loss of my parents, sometimes someone just being kind in the store on the right day or just being willing to chuckle about something or give you a smile, that got me through on some days where on the outside I looked fine and on the inside maybe I wasn't. I think about a lady that I met in a home store while I was picking out a blanket to take to my biological father, who I had never met before, while he was dying. And I just thought about how this friendly little lady making small talk about how we wanted to just touch all the blankets and feel all the blankets and how you didn't know about the right one until you felt it. She met me on a day where I was doing this really strange and really hard thing. In case you're wondering, I did pick out a Peanuts blanket, and it turned out that both he and I are huge Charlie Brown fans. And so there was definitely some wisdom bestowed in that moment, but that lady had no idea how important she was. And so think about that, right? Think about how sometimes maybe you pour into a student or it could be a client of yours if you're in business. It could be a neighbor, and you may never know. You may never know the difference that you make. Another thing is to take time for your friends. If I am honest, and I tell this to a lot of women, of moms of younger children now, I felt a lot of pressure I was a primary caregiver for my children. And so also wanted to have a career, and I wanted to provide certain opportunities to my children economically. And I wanted to be a model of learning and growing at work. And so if I'm honest, it was family and work, and then it was friends and community. And I recognize now that that was a little out of sorts, and so I encourage women of young children, and all women really, especially women, but also men, to take time for your friends. That is not wasted time. That is not indulgent time. My family, my husband, my children, they were so wonderful to me and were so supportive to me as I was losing my parents. But if I'm all honest, the a lot of the really hard stuff, a lot of the really messy stuff, it was my friends who got me through that because they could stand with me in a different way. They hadn't lost a mother-in-law or a grandmother. And so they were able to stand with me and support me and really just listen to some of the rawest and hardest things that came out of my mouth. And so take time for your friends, be a support to them just like they are to you. It's not indulgent, it's necessary. Your family, your community, your workplace, they need you to show up whole. Teachers who are listening, I know for a fact that when you go into a classroom and you are not feeling okay emotionally, that absolutely is transmitted to kids. I have shown up as a teacher in classrooms, that day where maybe nothing's terrible, but you got up and you woke up a little bit late, you spilled some coffee on your shirt, you dropped your lunch on the way out the door, you got to work and your socks didn't match. Maybe you guys don't do that, but I have definitely had that exact day. I've shown up at work with two different shoes on too. And so when I have those days where I show up grumpy, guess what else happens? My students show up grumpy. And so I have had to learn to really take time to manage my feelings and make sure that I'm okay, that I'm mentally and emotionally strong and healthy for people in my life. And also just show up because you deserve it, right? You deserve to have the support and the time with your friends. So show up for them. I'm not perfect at this. I'm thinking about a friend right now that when I get off of here, I'm going to call her and I'm going to say, all right, what do you need? Because I haven't, I'm not perfect at this at all, but I'm working on it and I am learning that it is so important. And part of that too is make new friends, right? I used to kind of have this thing of already have my friends. I had a couple of friends that I was lucky enough to make early in life and their family, they are my family. And so sometimes I'm guilty of being like, I'm booked. I'm good. No, take time to make new friends. Right now, I am literally pursuing people that I meet, women that I meet who I think, ooh, we could be friends. I'm texting them, cringy as it is, and saying, I think we should be friends. Tell me when you can get together. Does this day work? It doesn't have to be anything too big. Can we sip a coffee and take a walk around the block? But make that time for connection and make that time for friends. And then the last thing is, again, not perfect at it, but I'm really working on strength training. I inadvertently lost a good bit of weight at one point because I developed a lot of food allergies. And as I lost a lot of weight quickly by accident, I lost a lot of strength and a lot of muscle. And I did not like what that looked like in terms of my functionality. And so I am learning that I absolutely have to prioritize strength training, a little bit of walking, and lots of pickleball, hopefully, in order to stay healthy and stay well. And so, yeah, those are some things I'm learning right now. Now, we're going to take one more break, and when we get back, I'm going to answer my favorite question that I ask my guests, which is, what are two pieces of advice that you want to share? Notice I don't say the two most important pieces of advice. Who in the world could pick that? But just two really important pieces of advice that are on your mind today, and then we'll go from there. So I'll see you back in just a moment.
If you have enjoyed this podcast and some of the messages and ideas shared by Dr. Henderson here on Engaging with Monique, why not have her come and speak to your school, community group, conference, or nonprofit? From California to Texas to Mississippi to South Dakota, Dr. Henderson has extensive experience connecting with both large and small groups. Her energy and insights can challenge and grow your team to make a difference, even in challenging times of rapid change. As a former journalist and educational researcher, she is also skilled at facilitating panel discussions for a variety of groups. As one client said, Dr. Henderson is always the most energetic person in the room, and she can help to serve as a great reminder of why the work that we do matters, today and always. Email Monique at EnglishLearnersEngage.com or go to EngagingWithMonique.com for more information.
Okay, welcome back to Engaging with Monique, a podcast where we talk about how it is that we work to make the world just a little bit better and inspire others and ourselves every day. My favorite question that I'm going to be asking guests this season is, what are two pieces of advice that you want to share with your guests? Again, not most important pieces of advice, just two really good pieces of advice. And so today, the two pieces of advice that I want to share for you are, the first one is, no one is thinking about you. Not really, not in a way that matters. So this is a theme that you will hear in episodes this season, and that is, do not let what other people think affect your decisions. You're not going to make other people happy, right? As far as, you're not going to be able to satisfy everyone. You know that joke, you can't satisfy everyone because you're not tacos? It's true. But we think about a story about my daughter. So when my daughter was, you would never know it now, but when she was in elementary school, she was kind of a quiet, reserved kid. And one day she was so flipped out because she had left her backpack in my classroom. She was a student in my school, and she had left her backpack in my room. So that meant that she had to walk in the building without her backpack. And she was just a wreck about it. And I said, Hannah, why is this such a big deal? I don't understand it. And so she told me, and she was in tears. To her, it was a very big feeling. She said, everyone's going to be looking at me and they're going to wonder why I don't have a backpack. And they're going to think I am not prepared for my day. And I sat her down as patiently as I could. And I said, sweet, sweet girl, here's a secret to life, okay? No, those people aren't thinking about you. They're not thinking about whether or not you have your school bag because they're just thinking about their day. They're thinking about what they have to do today. They're thinking about the morning they had before they came to school. They're thinking about what their mom just told them or what the warm up is going to look like when they go into their first class of the day. So no one is really thinking as much about you as you think. And then if what they're thinking trends negative, they're going to trend negative regardless, right? So don't make decisions based on what others may or may not think of you. Again, that will be a theme that you will hear. So if that's something that you grapple with, and I think most of us do, that most of us are like sweet little 7-year-old Hannah. And we do retreat to thinking, well, what are people going to say? Lots of conversation about that this season. And then my other piece of advice, and I'm not really sure when this came into play for me with clarity, but when I make a decision about whether or not to do something, I always try to choose the option that will give me the largest life. Okay. So that looks like saying yes to things that are new, things that are interesting, things that are exciting, sometimes things that don't quite make sense. Okay. I will tell you that there are people that have looked at my company and then looked at the idea of this podcast and kind of thought, why are you doing this? Does this really make sense? But to me, it was about choosing connection and choosing the larger and choosing to inspire and then choosing the larger life. So we've made that decision as a family when faced with a move or an opportunity to start a new business or to switch jobs. You want to be practical, yes. You want to be financially responsible, but whenever possible, choose the thing that gives you the larger life. And that might, again, look like a move, a job change, just saying yes to an invitation for a walk and coffee with a new friend, joining that book club, learning to play the piano badly like me, right? Because your friend thinks that, maybe you should get a group me and go to some group lessons together or something. But just choosing every day the larger life, you almost never regret that choice. So those are my pieces of advice. So as much as I hate it, this first episode, it has come to an end. I say first episode because it's the first that will be presented in the series. But as you can tell from the way I've spoken about the exciting guests that we have coming in this season, I'm actually recording it at the end of the season. So, but as much as we hate it, this time now has come to an end. But don't worry, we're going to be back again soon. In the meantime, I hope you can tell from what we've talked about today that you don't want to miss a single episode. The folks that are on this season are so much more interesting than me, and they just bring so many great lessons. They've made me better just by sitting with them and listening. And so if you check out the show notes and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast so you do not miss a single episode. And if you're as excited about this season as I am, or even half excited, because we know I tend to be the most enthusiastic person in the room, tell a friend and then be sure to follow us on social media at Engaging with Monique. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again very soon.
Thanks for spending part of your day engaging with Monique. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, so you'll know when the next episode drops. Find our Facebook page for show notes and more. And don't forget to tell a friend about how much you love engaging with Monique.